So, Julien, you've been in this game of racing and having a team that you own for going on 14 years. What is the number one lesson you've learned in those 14 years, if you had to pick one?
You got to be dumb to play this game.
Tell me more.
Well, it's a lot of sacrifice, a lot of effort, a lot of work, like everything else in life. But it's a lot of work and financially very little reward. But there's a lot of other rewards you can get by achieving performance and stuff, which is a different type of reward in life. This is the journey that I chose for the past like over 10 years to because I used to work at the same time as I was doing this, but now it's been a couple years. I don't do anything else but the team. But yeah, it's um and a lot of sacrifice overall just to be able to do it.
And so, guys, we're here with Julien Perrier, the team owner of the Partzilla PRMX racing team, a racing team that competes in Supercross in the United States. And so I want to kind of follow up on what you had said. Now, to me, if someone's going to make a lot of sacrifice, there is something to be gained from it. There's a reason we make sacrifices. What do you feel has been the thing that has driven you to give up so much of your personal time, your personal finances, and invest so much in this team?
Shit, I don't know.
I mean,
uh
were
I
you
think
a
it's a challenge. The challenge of it is very little people in my situation that have achieved where we at right now as a team. So yeah, I think the challenge of it and the the fact that it's really like exclusive to do it kind of, and we don't have, or I don't own a big company behind it to shove funding into it. We have worked a lot to get where we are right now with like the Partzilla group and all the other sponsors that's coming every year, and it's an ongoing process, which I think it will never stop. Like every year is a you have to prove yourself that you're still good for your sponsors, that the team's still bringing something to the table for them. Yeah, I think it's the ongoing effort kind of do it, and yeah, it's quite unique as a business person if you want, but yeah, it's really the challenge of it. I think is what really drives me to continue doing it, and like kind of hearing sometimes like, oh, this is impossible to be done, or that's really tough to be there. It is. It's super tough, but it's possible to do it.
So now you've had this relationship with Partzilla for how many years now?
We're going on 3 years now.
3 years. Okay.
Yeah.
What was it that you presented? Like, because a lot of people that either own a team or even pro athletes, they're always looking for those sponsors. They're always looking for those partnerships that help propel their career and even just support the fact that their career can even exist. And I think a lot of people don't go about it right. I think a lot of people make mistakes. What do you see as maybe one of the biggest mistakes that you see either athletes or other team owners making when it comes to forming strategic partnerships with people? And what have you experienced or learned in that regard over the years?
That's a tough question because I mean, I'm not the one to kind of tell anyone that I do stuff better than anyone else or whatever. In my opinion, that became something that my wife told me. She's like, focus on the ones you got instead of trying to search for a million others. And that's what we're trying to do with the Partzilla group, is try to be Partzilla everything. Like the semi, the awnings, the banners, the bikes, everything is, I would say, 75% Partzilla on everything. So in order to keep growing relationships with bigger sponsors, I feel like, in my opinion, is to try to go all in with them, which is tough for the smaller ones. But the smaller ones, you have to, when you get into the dialogue of sponsorship with the smaller sponsors, you have to be super kind of open and honest about what you're going to get. And if you give X amount of dollar, don't expect to get the moon at the end of the year. This is the spot you get. This is what you're going to get. And as best as you can, try to achieve what you've told them that you're going to do, which is really tough in some areas because times, the clock's ticking. You leave for travels, you come back, you're like, it's tough to manage everything. But I feel like the spread yourself thin on everything is what can be tough and what can make you lose some of those more important sponsors.
Yeah, that really resonated with me because I do feel that, even just in business in general, that's like a good
Hmm.
philosophy, right? Because it takes, I think the last time that, or at least one of the things that I believe, a statistic that's always stuck in my head, is it takes 7 times as much effort to acquire a new customer than it does to sell to the customers that you already have, which seems to really be in alignment with your philosophy with the team
Yeah,
because um, we're always looking for the next
big
person,
thing.
the next big thing. When and it's almost just like life in general, right? Like we win a race or we win in life, but then it's like as quickly as the win comes, is as quickly as we're moving on to the next. And we sometimes, I think, maybe move a little bit too swiftly, a little too fast, and maybe it's a little bit of shiny object syndrome. But you know, so
It
much
is.
effort, right, to get
Yeah.
to that. And relationships take time, right? Like think
Yep.
about it. If when you married your wife, I mean, I don't know how long you did. How long did you guys date before you got married?
We've been together for 10 years.
Yeah. So relationships take time. You have to know, like, and trust someone, and they evolve and they time. And I think that in our sport, that no one ever really seems to have that strong of a relationship. And even just your relationship with Partzilla for 3 years, like I would consider that, that's a pretty strong relationship. And tell me about this PRMX. How does PRMX, the second half of your team's name, how does PRMX fit into this?
Well, PRMX is what I started in 2010. It used to be totally different than it is right now. PRMX is just the team. That's the business behind the team. So I have the business in US and one up north in Canada. So that's just my part of the business because I do quite a lot myself, and surroundings do a lot with me. But yeah, I just felt like, I mean, if someone comes in and they're like, "Oh, we want the PRMX spot on the rig," yeah, well, it's business. Everything's up for grabs, right? But till some till something doesn't show up the way I feel like it's worth it, it's gonna be the parts of the PRMX racing team.
I love it. And I think that, and I want to hear your comments and thoughts on this. I feel that a lot of athletes and teams have historically given up spaces and spots for too cheap, right? And they'll say, well, I'd rather at least have an extra 10, 20 grand, even though I want 50, or I feel like this spot's worth 50 to 75.
Yeah.
I'd rather take the 12 or 15 and instead of not. What are your beliefs on that? Because I'm wondering if maybe we sometimes give up spots too easily and for too low of a price. Do you think well, most of us tend to sell ourselves short?
Yeah, I'm not sure like what to say on that because I've done it in the past, but now I don't do it anymore. To where, but there's some areas where you know, you build a budget, right? And if at the end you need 25 to wrap up the budget, and then the spot's worth 50, and you have someone coming in at 25, you might take it just to wrap up your budget and whatnot. So it's a tricky situation where you don't want to do it, but you kind of have to do it at some spot. So um, yeah, it's not something I would want to do in a business, but sometimes you have to take a little bit less in order to make it to the next month or year or level, I guess. So
Now, when it comes to your team, you compete in which classes in Supercross?
250 West, 250 East, and 450.
Okay. Now, when you start to budget for those different groups, so we have the 250s, 250 West, and 450. So we got three groups, three pots that we need to appropriate funds to.
Yeah.
How do you appropriate funds? Do you break it down based on uh, each of those three, or do you have a different way of breaking it down? Is it per rider? Is it per event? How do you break down the budget for that?
Uh, for me, it's per rider, per event. Every rider is like I compare a lot like any sports team, right? Like there's people in that sports team, let's say hockey or football or whatever you're a fan of. There's players that make more and there's players that make less, and there's some that has value and some that's just there to keep going and stuff like that. Um, yeah, I try to be fair with everyone and to be not too different from everyone's deal because sometimes they'll talk to each other and be like, I don't want too much disparity, but at the same day, they all understand that if their performance is better, they'll get more money or get paid more or bona fide. So I go a lot with Ryder, what they bring us, what they bring to the sponsors like Partzilla and whatnot. And if sometimes I'll have meetings and they'll be like, "Hey, we really like what this guy did on social, and then the result was good this weekend, and his recap was great. So see what we need to keep him going if he wants to continue with us and this and that." So it goes a long way for every rider or every athlete to be nowadays. Yes, results are important, but the off the track is probably more important than on the track, which is kind of weird in some areas, but that's just the world we're in right now.
Yeah, and I totally agree with you because I mean, ultimately, sponsors or partners are looking to, get attention and eyeballs on their offer, and
Yep.
so you want to support one getting the eyeballs on the offer. Which sure, screen time and results will increase that time, right? If there's an LCQ, and your rider is leading it or at least being aggressive or being getting a lot of coverage. Obviously, those eyeballs are important, but it does seem like the endorsement of an athlete or a team for a product and speaking to the benefits that that product has, or to me, even just in business, it's show don't tell. If I saw you guys using a tool all the time at Supercross, or all the time, you were talking about this one thing
Yeah.
it would make me want to buy it, right? How do you manage the selection of athletes when it comes to finding that balance between results, which are going to give you the eyeballs and the attention, but then also the social media presence and the on-camera presence that an athlete has, and even just the frequency that they post? Because a lot of these teams, the partners could use the content to promote their content. If the athletes create it on a race weekend, it's valuable to them. So how do you balance finding an athlete that's got results versus one that can provide value for the partners?
Time, I would say, like I look at every rider, what can they bring us results wise, and how is their social media? Because results and social media are pretty much the same. Like if a guy has a lot of potential, then you can work with him to get better results. If he has a good following, but he's not that greatest in social media, you can work with him and have a better social media at the end. So I look at both like in an equal type of way where yes, the results will bring you industry coverage more than anything else. The social will bring you more like a all around kind of attention. So you have to have both. And also for me, it's just to know what type of team we are. It's like right now I want to fight more for top tens and maybe throw in a eat race win in there and stuff. But I know as of now, which if we podium, I would be ecstatic. It would be great, but you have to set a goal that's a real goal and it's attainable at the end too, right? Like if we're like, oh yeah, we're coming in this season to win the championship in 450 Supercross, well, you might be disappointed after a couple rounds because the guys we're playing against or racing against, they have resources that we can't even get, and the riders and the money and this and that. So it's a little bit like F1. You have the A teams and the B teams, and the B teams are super stoked when they make 1 point. For us, we're super stoked when we're in the top 10 or top 15 450, or when we win the LCQs, because it's, for us, it's our wins is the same as the big wins at the end of the day. And like sponsorship wise and stuff, is, you asked me the question earlier, which, yeah, it's the same thing. Just be realistic with the sponsors that you're trying to get, and be like, hey, we're gonna do this, and do it. At the end of the day, it's yes, you have injuries. There's a lot of stuff that can happen, but at the end of the day, if I would go into Pardilla and say this year we're winning a championship in the 450 Premier class in Supercross, and I'd be like, okay, sweet, let's do it, and then we finish 17th, it might not work that well. But if you explain the fact that there's OEMs, factory, and then after there's a little spot for all the teams like mine, and then we fight for it every weekend, and they get good coverage, and they get, so yeah, I think it's to be as realistic as possible, where we are sometimes not 100% realistic with our goals, but I think being a little bit dreamer will help us moving to the next step too.
Yeah, for sure. And I always like to call them targets,
Yeah.
because a goal is a little bit more black and white, right? If your goal is to be top 10, and let's say you were always top 20, then you get 11th, you improve dramatically. To go from the change from 20th to 11th is not linear. It's more somewhat logarithmic, because as you know, it gets the closer you get to the top, the harder it is to make a game. One place means
Yes.
even more, right?
Yeah.
And so to go from 20th to 11th, but what's interesting is if you go from 20th to 11th, and your goal was top 10, then officially you failed, right? So goals are very much black and white. However, if you set the target of being top 10, at least there's a little bit more flexibility and compassion in the fact that, hey, we didn't get top 10, but we moved all the way up to 11th, which is a huge win for the team. We can take that momentum moving forward to get better sponsors, to get more money, from our partners. So, I think it's interesting, even just the expectations set by goals versus targets. To me, there's a little bit more flexibility and compassion in targets versus goals. So that's one thing that I always keep in mind with my athletes I work with. I want to hear a little bit more about athlete selection outside of results and outside of social. Obviously I'm a mental performance coach, so I'm always listening to how athletes think. I'm asking them questions to kind of hear how they respond. I'm listening to post-race interviews, post-race press conferences. I can really get an idea for the belief system, the narratives, the focal points for an athlete, their vibe, their energy. What do you look for outside of social and outside of results when you're actually interacting with an athlete? Because, there's a lot of athletes that would love to be on your team. And so there needs to be a selection process, I would think. I mean, do you have a process for selection? Is it vibe? Walk me through that.
I mean, it's not going to be a super long answer. I go with enthusiasm of someone without being like harassing. But yes, we select, or I select a few kind of candidates if you want, and I'll reach out or anything, and some reach out to me, and I go a lot with the vibe, with what type of personality, like positive, like someone that's here to make a career out of it, to wanting to be better. Of course, we've changed a lot through the years, where I was dreaming to make a night show till I was dreaming to make a main. Now we're just trying to make top tens, so you have to change a little bit your selection through that, but the basic is the same. how the guys react to pressure, how the guys react to failure, are they positive around others, are they always complaining, and like this is big for me. Like I really have a hard time with people complaining, and it's just yeah, I will look a lot, like you said, like the vibe and what they can bring as a fun part of a group where we're all together and we're in the semi or at SOB when we're training and everyone's kind of, having fun with it while working hard and trying to challenge each other, but in a healthy way where, yeah, it's fun people to be around with is what I'm trying to keep with the results and the social, like all in all, like the aspect of the personalities. I want like colorful personalities that yeah, bring something to the table, and it could be super fun, and yeah, you need that into what we do, because it's for us it's over 30 weekends a year. So if we have people that's always negative, always dragging their feet and stuff, it gets old. So yeah, vibe and personality is a cool thing to have when you can have results and hard work.
Yeah, that resonates with me because feelings are contagious, and I've been in part of several teams, and I can tell you that I can walk into a team and within a matter of minutes, not even an hour, minutes, 10, 15, 20 minutes, start to get a real clear vibe for the energy of the collective, uh, the group as a collective.
Yeah.
And it's interesting how, a rising tide lifts all ships. And, if you've got the right vibe, you've got the right energy, someone like a Kevin Moran's or a Joshua Cartwright, these are guys that have really good vibes that I've been around, at least that I vibe with, right? And so,
No, I can't stand Josh anyway.
oh
If
really?
if he listens to that, he'll laugh. He's like my adoptive child. So him and Logan are like they don't ride for me for like 6 7 years or something, and they ask me questions every week on stuff, and they call me dad all the time.
Yeah, and they've both, and I think, and it makes sense that they've been part of, you've been part of their success, right? Because they've
Mhm.
both been on your team, correct?
Yeah,
And so what's interesting is you see Logan, who is definitely Logan Carno, right? Who has
yeah.
gotten better in his riding, better in his relationships with sponsors. He brought on OnlyFans. He was the first guy to bring them on, and really got super creative with his personality and authenticity, which I really like that. And then Joshua Cartwright, he kind of came in with his own angle, which is here's the kid who's going to college and then racing on weekends. And then all of a sudden he gets a job, like a 40-hour a week.
He'll drag this for the rest of his life.
Yeah. But you know what, though? It does resonate because think about it. Of all the things that I could talk about Joshua Cartwright, that's what stands out is the
Yeah.
story, right?
No,
Because
I get it.
I think a lot of athletes, I mean, and I want to hear what you say on this. I feel like a lot of athletes don't create a brand for themselves. And with a
Hmm.
brand, there's a story. I think that there's a gap there. And I think that, everyone always talks about how do we grow the sport? And everyone thinks it's just a matter of like getting more TV coverage. But like to me, it's all about the personalities. Like watch F1, Drive to Survive. The reason why that Netflix series has done so well is because of the stories. It's the
Yeah.
characters, it's the plot, the conflict, the drama, the resolution. Like there's a flow to all this. Where do you feel athletes in supercross and motocross fall short with branding, and where do you feel we need to go to grow?
Oh, I don't know. I don't know what they're doing right or wrong. Like I feel like everyone has their own personality, and there's people. I feel like that subject is good in the matter where when you're a privateer and you have to create your own identity and brand, right? Where you're like, all right, I'm on. It's either I get on a team and I have all these rules that I need to follow. I need to wear this. I need to use that, or I sacrifice and go into work mode and do my own program, which is a lot more work, but there's freedom that comes with it in some areas. There's some guys that would love that, and there's some guys that I know they want the life that goes off of it. Like Cade will tell you, Cade Clayson, he'd much rather comfortable with a team like mine where he gets paid, he gets bikes, he has a mechanic, he has a place to train, he gets travels, and like he's taken care of entirely. But when he's done at 3 or 4 in the afternoon, he goes home. It doesn't have to do other than train, be smart, healthy, do his social media work and this and that. But all the rest, he gets to spend time with his family, with his wife, and gets to go hunting and whatever. He wants the life after racing, if you want. He wants to have a life where when you do your own thing, it's pretty much all the time, 24/7. So we had a conversation before where Kid was like, nah, that for me, what I want is this, instead of, because he could probably do his own program. He's well known and this and that. And maybe at the end of the year, you'd be able to make 5% more in the incomes, but quality of life will go down like 50%. So after that, it's gonna it's you have to choose your battles in that area, I guess. But yeah, personality is branding yourself and kind of create like you said, like Cartwright, Logan, Morans, and all these guys. They're making their program like good because it's focused on them, and people around them can help this person. Like, you like this guy, you can help him directly instead of helping a team where you don't like that guy. It's like,
It's very true. So one thing that you had mentioned is that your team trains at south of the border,
yeah,
correct?
yes.
Tell me a little bit more about that. When does training start? I mean, give me kind of the basics of when does training start? Do you actually screen athletes out by maybe having them come out and do some training? Because, how do you know what athlete you're signing unless you already have a previous relationship with them, or if you at least know their work ethic? So maybe walk me through your process of preparing for a season, and maybe a little bit about how maybe athlete selection works as far as like at the track, like viewing them. So we know we've covered social, we know we've covered results, so we can look in the past on that. But what do you look for, preseason, and what's your flow preseason?
Building tracks is the first step. Like, Ryan will call me or text me, hey, we're building tracks end of September, which is where we like them to have normally when there's no other events. We're building new tracks at the side of the border, and we start, prepping the shop, cleaning up, and prepping the rooms for the guys, because we all stay there. Like, all the riders and everyone, they all have their little room there. We have our shop on site. The gym is there. They have everything to work out of in one single place. That's the first step, is to get we don't need the riders there until we're ready to get to work and get a basic inventory and see what we need, and kind of get to a spot where, okay, now we can have people on board, which is somewhere in mid to end of October. Is still pretty early for Supercross, but that's where we like to kind of start playing with stuff and get after it. This year is unique because in the new KX450, we just got 2 that arrived last Friday, so we're gonna start working on that. It's a bit late, but with the WSX and everything, it worked out well, um, and whatnot. But yeah, we normally start mid to end October, and go from there, and test the bikes and test suspension and motor packages, and we try to evolve every year to get as close as possible to being some sort of factory team. And yeah, that's what we do. We go there, and like again, that's all we do there. Like, there's no distractions. There's not much around. You can go to Myrtle Beach, which is an hour and a half, but around there is dirt bike racing and training and hanging out and trying to see what kind of ideas we can all put together to be better as a whole.
Yeah, and with all your experience, what I'm really curious to hear about is when you watch an athlete. All athletes want to be a better version of themselves. Everyone
Hmm.
wants to improve. Everyone wants to get better results. With all your experience in watching the variety of athletes come through your team, what seems to be the common link for success for the athletes that you see that do well? And even on the flip side, what do you think is one of the biggest mistakes that holds most athletes back?
Well, I personally think hard work is what changes everything. Perseverance, hard work, no quit, um, positive, trying to have a good mindset. You have a bike that breaks or something, do it again tomorrow and start fresh, and try not to drag all these negative for too long is where I feel like the guys that are like that will always get better. Even if they're never going to win a championship, they'll always improve to where, yeah, mindset is part of a lot in life, not just racing, but everything else around is mindset's very important, and being positive and trying to be better all the time and hard work. On the upper end, I feel like excuses, being a bit, we're all a little bit lazy sometimes, but like being nonchalant. And I feel like excuses is one of the most common thing. I'm like, oh, I don't have this bike, then I can't perform, or my tires, or this or that. There's always an excuse for something, and that's not just in dirt bike. That's in life in general. Like I do it all the time myself, and I catch myself doing it, and I try not to do it again.
Yeah, and I think the mistake is people don't realize the cost of placing blame outside of themselves is with that blame also comes the power, right? So you're taking the power to change and to improve, and you're pushing it outside of you. You're saying, okay, well, if it's the tires, if it's the bike, it's the suspension. Okay, well then that's where the power is for you to change. So based on you blaming them, these things, and
Yeah,
so
those are the things. But sorry to interrupt, but you'll blame all this, but you'll get at the test track at 1 p.m. instead of being at 10:45 with everyone.
exactly. Yeah, and then what happens is you're giving your power away to these things. So
Yeah.
it almost sets like a mindset of these conditions that need to be met that aren't based on truth, right? Like if I have a better bike, I will perform well. If I have better tires, I will perform well. And the truth is, you set these narratives or these conditions up, these beliefs, and they're not based on truth. And then what happens is you don't look within and you don't work on your inner game. And now all of a sudden there's no power for you, or there's no value of you working on yourself. And then these other things just don't ever. If the team doesn't acquire a better bike, doesn't acquire better tires or better suspension, well then where is there an ability to change? And now at that point you're like, oh, this is the best I can do, but it's actually not true.
No,
And so
exactly.
you know,
Me and Mitchell Harrison had that conversation the other night in the gym, and he's like, you can give a basically stock bike with suspension to Jet Lawrence, sorry, and he'll still perform.
yep, for sure. Yeah, you find a way, right?
Yeah, because
Um,
there's work, there's talent, there's mindset, there's everything that goes into it, not just the machine.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, someone's controlling that machine.
Yeah.
um, so, do you feel over the last decade or so that the gap between a team like yours and a factory team is the gap between the quality of the bike closing, or is it expanding?
I think it's closing, especially for us, where we're growing, and I don't want to say we're factory, not at all, but we're growing and we have a little bit more budget to work with, and our bikes are as good as they can be. There's some stuff that we don't have access to and we'll never will if we're not factory team, but I feel like the gap is closer and closer to where, yeah, there's a bit of power difference, but like a lot of factory teams now are going back to OEM style stuff for flex, for feel, for this and that. And now you're realizing, oh, why we're trying to get all these blink parts for no reason anymore. And then you got factory KTM running OEM style forks, and you're like, oh, okay, so that's good stuff. And it's all about rider feeling as well, and rider mindset, and if he trusts his bike and whatnot. So yeah, I feel like the gap in machine per machine is a bit closer. The big gap is the personnel, the funding, the resources, the freshness of everything is where we get beat.
the freshness of the parts and
Parts,
what do you
bikes,
place? Yeah.
everything. Like they do. I'm speculating is what I'm hearing. Like I'm not in there with the factory team, but like when they do 10 hours on a 450 engine, it doesn't even get rebuilt. They just take a new one. And then a frame's going to be maybe 20 hours after it's too much stretched out. Then they're starting with a new one. And like it is a difference, and it helps, right? In all areas. We totally understand that. That's why we're trying to get a little bit more motorcycles to keep everything more fresh and more motors and this and that. But at the end of the day, they have the resources. They have the 10, 10, 12 people around them in the staff to one guy's changing a wheel while the other one's doing something. Like if they have a flat tire on the side of the track, like they have it all there. So the big difference for me is resources and funding. Of course, that comes with the OEM, which is fine, right? You have to accept where you are, and not try to always be, oh, I wish I had this, I wish I had that, and try to be happy with what you gain and where you are. But the big difference between a private team and a factory team is, I would say, I always said freshness. What that means, everything's fresh all the time.
I like that. And when it comes to comparing a factory team to yours, the one thing that I think that you have over them is you have less of a corporate feel, a corporate vibe. Like I know Team Honda. There's always been like rumors that the higher ups are very strict, and maybe even the communication between Japan and the U.S. There's obviously a language barrier. There's a cultural barrier. There's these barriers that exist that might create some friction and might decrease the flexibility and the mobility of a factory team. Whereas someone like you have the ability to move and adjust faster, I would say. Sure, maybe not the resources there, but you can move in different ways. If all of a sudden you needed to, either get in a different tire brand, or maybe there was a suspension part you wanted, I would speculate that you guys can move a little bit more swiftly. Do you feel that might be one of the advantages that you have, or is there another advantage that you might have over the factory teams?
Well, maybe a little bit of freedom, like you said, in some areas, but we do try to be as respectful as possible with our sponsors, right? So, which may be something that I need to work on myself, is where when someone supplies me with something, I really want to use it and not hide the fact that we're not using it. Like the factory teams, they don't use half of what's written on their bike. But yeah, I would say there's some freedom at some point, but the for me, how I see it, like the higher ups and this and that in a factory team, I just think it brings respect to the base of the pyramid, if you want. But yeah, we do move left and right, and we want to use, example, we're not sponsored by X part, then we can use that part. No one cares, right? That's a freedom that is pretty good. But at the end of the day, the goal is to be factory supported in the next few years. So
Nice. Oh, so all right. Tell me. I was going to ask another question, but I want to stick with this topic. So, what exactly is your vision for the next couple of years? Sounds like that factory team is part of it. What do you need to, one, is there anything else that's part of your vision for the future in the next 5 years? And then two, more specifically, what is it that you feel that you're lacking that you need in order to become a factory team?
better organization in general, which is something I work on every year, and try to be more prepared, more like I said, organized and whatnot. And I think last year was good. This year with what's coming, presentation will be right on point with where we need to be factory or OEM supported, or just the little next step. With I feel like the rig setup and then the awning and this and that's really important for visual. And after that, like the presentation of each bike and how you present yourself in the pits, where you're organized and clean, and like that's something I focused a lot the last 2 years, and I want to continue pushing on. And I feel like just taking small steps every year, and then keep pushing in the right direction. And there should be some openings in a few years or something. Like if you look at Star Racing, they started small, and yeah, they do have a lot of funding, but I'm confident that I can get her up funding by being a good salesperson and promoting my program and whatnot. That's not, it's always a concern every year, but it's something I need to continue growing. And I feel like I'm doing a fairly good job at the promotion and selling of the team. So I feel like in the factory style, it's just to be corporate a little bit more to attract the factory.
Yep, that makes sense. Yeah, and a lot of it is, like you said, how you present. I even notice. I don't know about you, but I notice little things. Like I'll notice if a team has like the same color. I don't know why this bothers me, but if a team has like the same color, the same jersey, same like color pants, but then maybe the shoes are different color. I don't know why it bothers me. I'm like, that's not professional. And I know that's
Yeah,
being nitpicky,
a
but
bit of OCD.
it's a bit OCD for sure. But then when you look at, I always say, well, look, success leaves clues. If you look at KTM, it's like, all right, well, do those guys wear the same pants? It's like, yeah, they pretty much have more or less the same pants, not even the same color, but the same pants, and they have pretty much the same shoes, right? Just a
Yep.
different size. And so little things like that, and I think that's where people fall short is they don't think that those things matter, but and maybe they don't matter that much. However, if you give, if the pants are 1%, the shoes are 1%,
Yeah,
uh,
it's presentation.
yeah, the presentation, but it's all these little things that add
Hmm.
up. And then all of a sudden you add 10 1%ers up, now you're at 10%. That matters.
Yep.
Everyone's always looking for the 10%, but I would argue that we should all start thinking in a different way. Don't look for the 10% gains, whether it's on track and speed, whether it's you with the
Yep.
presentation and professionalism of your team, but look for 10 1%, right? What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I agree. Like for me, like I see all those things, and that's where we're trying to come in this year, where to be more like, you know, pants and like jerseys on Friday, Saturday, they're different, but they're the same for everyone, and just trying to be like as corporate as possible in that area, and like nothing's on the ground in the pits. And like you look at these teams when they're prepping bikes, there's very little things, laying there. They have the bolts, they're all lined up and nice and clean. And then I agree with the 1% rule, where you can do what can you do today to make it better. It doesn't have to be a $10,000 change. It could be, just something that you change yourself. So
Yeah, for sure. And then so like, let's kind of, so I want to bring you to a place where imagine you're at Anaheim 1 and you're on the floor. It's, maybe qualifying, free practice, doesn't really matter. Maybe it's even race day or race time. Um, what is it that you do, or how is it that you present yourself to help lead the team and to help them um, perform at their best? Like walk me through, like, what does it look like? What would I notice if I watched you lead your team? Because whether you'd like to admit it or not, you are leading a team, right? It's your team and you're leading them. So leadership is a big part of the success of a team, of a group, an organization. How do you lead your team on a race day?
I think by action. I've always been, and I'm not someone to yell or to do that much. I do yell, but very little. But I always been someone that would try to kind of prone by example, where I can, even if it's like I'll take a broom and sweep the floor, or see stuff on the ground, I'll grab it and put it in the garbage, and make it looking at each bike and making sure I don't see anything that catches my eyes that needs to be addressed or anything. I think there's just that That's how I do it. That's maybe I have to work on that area as well as a leader, like you said. But I feel like to set up the rig, to clean, to make sure they have everything they need to go racing, and kind of caring is where I think I can make a difference. Was because I do care. I do care about the presentation. I care about what the bike looks. I care about if they're spotless, if they're dialed in, if their suspension works good, if the motor's strong enough. Like that I really, really, really care about giving them the best machine we can possibly do, and having all the rest around them where they're proud to be under the tent.
Nice. I like that. That resonated with me. I like that a lot. How so?
It's more in the
When you,
actions, if you want, right? The actions over the saying.
yeah, and it's so true because it's always like a show don't tell. Like I know a lot of people are in the fitness space, right? And I as cheesy as they are, the people on Instagram that always capture my attention are the ones that all they do is they go before fat fat person no abs, after thin person abs. And I'm like, wow, this guy's good, right? I don't even know if they're male. I don't even know if the person's Instagram account. I don't even know if they're male or female. I don't know whether they're even qualified to do anything that they do, or I know nothing about them, but I see
Yeah.
this result, and I'm like, wow, I can get from there to there. And so, I do agree with you that show don't tell is
Yeah.
much more powerful than people think.
Mhm. Yeah, I think that's what I would like to do as much as possible. Is I can tell them what to do as much as I want, but if there's no examples of hard work and dedication, I think it's always fun to work hard for someone that works hard.
Yes, I like that. I like that. That's a quote. You got to put that on a shirt. That's quotable. um,
I'll have
now,
one made to put in the shop.
now, to kind of think back through the years. I even look back. I've been being a part of either motocross or supercross, um, more from like a team member standpoint, on and off since like '06. So I've seen things in the last almost 20 years, and there's been years that I've felt that I've noticed a lot of gains, a lot of progress. I've learned a lot. When you reflect back on the years that you've been a part of this sport of supercross and motocross, what year kind of stands out and why?
I think there's more than one. There's progress, I would say. There's upgrades, there's a new trailer, new easy ups. After that, like a trailer with an awning. After that, like an old snowmobile trailer that I modified with my friend at VR Medic. And then you every year is something that I need to do more, is to look back at it to where I was before, instead of just focusing on where I am and where I could be. Is look where you came from before. And starting, I don't know, like, I don't even 2012, I think, in the parking lot at MetLife with one 10 by 10 and my logo on shrouds of Logan's bike. And now you're running a full legit size team with semis and everything. It's like, I can't tell you one year that was like. Last year was a great year. We had good result, tons of mains. The year before was good as well. We had adversity, we had injuries, but we fought back with fill-in riders, and some fill-in riders did super well. And like, it's the no quit type of thing. But yeah, I feel like every year has something to bring.
Yeah, I love that. And then when you look at, I mean, we're always told comparison's the thief of joy. However, all of us compare ourselves to others. What's maybe been a team over the years, or maybe even in the last couple years, that you kind of emulate and look towards? Because I know with me, I'm always looking at people that do mental performance coaching. I'm always trying to figure out, like, all right, what is it that this guy's got on me? What do I have on them? How can I get better? And so I do feel like comparison can be the thief of joy unless you
Yeah.
do it through the lens of evolving yourself and your own program. What's kind of like one team that either you look up to, or maybe even if there's not one team, what are some things you look at the teams that you aspire to one day be, what are those things that you're looking at? What are the KPIs or metrics? What are the things you're looking for?
Well, definitely Star and PC is where I kind of put my eyes on, not to see what they're doing, but just to kind of, the story from Mitch, where he started to where he's at right now, the story of Star, where they started to where they at. I feel like they're the only slash factory teams that started from one person. Like Mitch created that kind of team, and I feel like if he did it, I can do it as well. To where like the corporate Austrian brands, they're corporate Austrian brands that comes from head office, which is super cool and everything. Like I would take one tomorrow morning, but the where I look at this to the one person that started in a kind of the garage story where you start there with, and then you make it to the top if you want.
Yeah, I like that. And one thing that we haven't talked about is you've had a relationship with Kawasaki for how many years now?
I've been racing Cowies for close to 10 years. I have a very small relationship with them. Like I buy everything through Partzilla. I've
So
I've chosen that bike because I was comfortable with it to work on it and this and that, and they had good programs to purchase bike back in the days, and now they have good contingency for our riders, and they work well. They're a great motorcycle, but yeah, I like as of now, I know everyone at Cowie and a little bit more, but it's not like I can go behind the shop and grab some parts yet. So maybe one day.
yeah, and it seems like, the one thing that stands out, because I was thinking about it, and, because you and I have talked over the years, and the one thing that just has always stood out for me is that you're very like consistent. Like I know when I walk by your trailer, like I know it's not going to be a whole bunch of new sponsors. It's not going to look all that different. It seems like there's a lot of consistency, and that to me creates a sense of longevity and trust. Like if I had a brand, what I would see in you that I would like is I would see the fact that wow, these guys always show up. They're consistent. They're reliable. They're staying with the same brand. Everything seems to be very consistent and reliable. That's what would draw me to your team as a potential partner. How have you developed that ability to be so consistent? Because we know that consistency is super important, especially if you're a golfer, right?
Yeah.
Consistency is it's not sexy. Like, you say the word consistent. If someone told me that I was consistent, I wouldn't be, thanking them
Yeah, I know
greatly.
what you mean.
Yeah, it's not the biggest compliment. However, we all talk about the value of consistency, and so maybe talk to me about how you have become so consistent with your program.
Um, I try to be as much as I can. Like there's obvious things that we need to change, or it's a business at the end of the day where I need to be able to make it to the end of the year. So yes, we do change stuff, but if it was for just my personal, I wouldn't change anything. Like I would keep the same guys. Like I have super long time sponsors like ASV. Bob has been with me for over 10 years. And it's more like we have a good relationship as persons now. It's not just like sponsors, and like the Parzilla's going 3 years, and hopefully we can keep it going for 10 if that's what I want to do and they want to do, and like it works out. And I think it's the relationship between humans that makes a difference at the end of the day, where yes, you need to perform, you need to promote the brands, but I really think that two persons connecting is where it's at.
I love it. Yeah, and I think that that's the one thing that I'm hearing from you when I reflect back on what we talked about is the value of relationships and realizing that it really is a partnership. It's
Yeah.
not a sponsorship, because to me, the term sponsor is more unilateral. It's one direction. At least it has that vibe and energy to me. Whereas a partnership is it's two people coming together with a mutually beneficial relationship. And so I think if more of us, more athletes and more teams start thinking in a partnership way and have that frame as opposed to a sponsorship frame or a what can you do for me frame.
Mhm.
Maybe if you lead with what can I do for you, we know there's something called reciprocity. I know with me, anytime anyone does something for me, I automatically want to do for them. They don't even have to
Yeah.
ask for a favor. I'm asking them, what can I do for you before they even ask what they want from me, right? And so I do feel like you seem to have mastered the relationships and mastered the value of not just acquiring relationships, but maintaining them. As we wrap things up, could you comment on, and my guess is that you're not going to have maybe so much like a specific answer, but what do you think people experience with you in their relationships with you from a business standpoint that make them want to stay with you? I mean, because the longevity and consistency is there. We know that relationships are the vehicle to get you there. Why is it? What am I going to notice if I'm in a relationship, a business relationship with you, that I'm not going to notice with someone else that's going to make me value more our relationship than one possibly with them?
Oh boy. Um, I don't want to say that my relationship with you would be more valuable than with someone else, but my relationship with you, let's say if you were a partner or sponsor, what you would agreed to do for us would, as much as I can in my power, would be done.
Okay.
I'm not saying you'll get more out of me than you would get out of another team, but I'm saying if you agree with me that you want to give XYZ and I'm telling you you're gonna get XYZ, there's a very, very high percentage of chance you're gonna get your XYZ.
I love it. And you know what? I think what I hear from that is one word, which is trust, right? Trust is built by you saying you're going to do something and you doing it,
Yeah.
and then even if you do say you're going to do something, and to your point, maybe you do come up a little bit short, if you at least explain and give me some
Yeah,
clarity
yeah, yeah.
as to why, oh, hey, I got it, right? If you're blaming, the team or blaming external forces, all right, that might compromise our trust. But
That's why I said a high percentage.
yeah, exactly.
Because everything could change. Have I been perfect with everyone in this road that we're in right now for the past 10 years? Not at all. I've tried to be as perfect as I could, but it's just impossible. But every year I learn, every year I get better at it, and every year I try to be more and more in the higher percentage, like I told you.
Well, with that said, what a powerful way to wrap up. Uh, Julien Perrier, owner of the Partzilla PRMX racing team, I can't thank you enough for all the value you provided. I know it just seemed like it rambled off your tongue, but I'll be honest with you, you kind of woke me up to a couple of things, and I'm sure there's going to be people that are going to listen to this that are going to gain value from this as well. How can people reach out to you, support you, or wire transfer you maybe 10, 20 grand to help support you?
Just DM me on Instagram or on the email at pr-mx@hotmail.com, or we're pretty much everywhere, so it's pretty easy to reach out to us if you want to wire money or anything.
And on Instagram, what's your handle on Instagram? And we lost him. Perfect time to wrap things up. Anyways, Julien did sign on with a low battery, and you know what? Perfect timing. Hey, Julian's out. So, anyways, guys, thank you so much for your support. And don't forget, the biggest thank you that you can offer me in the podcast, Behind the Best Podcast, is to share it with friends. Give us a 5-star rating. We always appreciate those. Thank you so much for tuning in.